This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, an international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. In this new series, I talk to coaches, leaders and experts who share their passion for this incredible profession and their knowledge of how to do marketing well. Our ambition is to contribute to the development of the coaching profession and to bring you some new ideas, insights and strategies so you can create an impact with your coaching and marketing. Welcome to another episode in the Make Time for Marketing series. Today we're going to talk about overcoming procrastination. My guest today is a clinical psychologist and has conducted workshops on procrastination at Columbia University and a variety of schools and universities in and around New York. She hosts a podcast and writes a blog dedicated to the subject of overcoming procrastination. And today we're going to talk about that subject in the context of marketing as a coach or as somebody interested in coaching. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Christine Lee. Christine, welcome.
Hi, Rob. Thank you so much for hosting me here. Hello to all the coaches and experts who are listening in today.
Oh, it's lovely to have you, Christine. So let's begin here because I'm always curious to know what marketing means to my guests. So what does marketing mean to you and how does marketing show up in your world?
Oh, that's a tough question to start with. I would say marketing has been like a circus for me. That is what comes to mind, that you walk in and it's this colorful tent and then you have to make your own decisions about how you're going to interact with all the potential in there. There's a room for this, there's room for that. You're challenged in this way. You have to learn this thing to get into this other room. And you want to experience all of it, or some of it you're not so friendly with and you don't really want to be in so much. So I think it's a big circus, but it's also a big circus of opportunity. I think it really is the bridge between who we are and what we have to offer the world and our clients and the people that we intend or hope to help. There may be people that are out there, I'm sure there are people who are out there that we haven't even thought of who could really have their life changed with a few sentences of what we have to offer or a few hours with us. So we know the circus is important. The circus of marketing is important, but I can certainly empathize with anyone who is listening who might say, you know what, that whole circus, it's too much for me. It feels so overwhelming. Feels like I don't belong in there. So Rob and I are here today to help you just enter the circus if you haven't yet.
Yeah, got it. I love that description there. And I've never heard marketing being talked of as a circus, but it paints a perfect picture in my mind in terms of what you're talking about there. So I'm really eager to tap into some of your expertise, particularly in the world of sort of procrastination and where we get stuck with things, because I know you do a tremendous amount of wonderful work helping people get unstuck, not just with marketing, but with so many aspects of their lives and business. Hopefully the wisdom that Christine's going to share with us today is going to help you in other areas of your life, not just in marketing. So in the context of marketing though, however, I'm sure this isn't the first time that you've been asked this question in the context of procrastination, but why do you believe people get stuck with things like marketing in their business? What shows up in your work?
It's certainly not the first time I've been asked that, but I guess it's the first time I've been asked that about marketing.
Right.
And I will start my response by talking about the concept of being stuck. Since you and I have last connected, Rob, I've done a lot of work and thought and experimentation with the concept of energy. And I think these days I see myself as someone who helps people get their energy unstuck. So you're right that it may not just be your work. You might just feel like you don't want to even get off the couch. That's procrastination as well. It doesn't have to be for a purpose or for productivity. It can just be that your energy is not matching with your intentions for even the smallest of activities. And I think most of us tend to see marketing as an important business furthering activity. But I think sometimes we overblow the importance of some of the things and tasks on our to-do list. And then that frightens us and that makes us feel stuck in our energy, even though really no one's truly stuck, where you couldn't move off the couch or you couldn't move into marketing. Eventually you can move. So stuck is always a temporary state of being. And that's maybe the first lesson that I have for you. Don't let your physical lack of movement make you feel like you don't have something to offer, like you don't have something to reveal. Because really, sometimes what I've seen with hardcore procrastinators is that the people who are most stuck are the ones who know they have so much more to go. That's why the frustration is there. That's why the self-flagellation is there. That's why the embarrassment is there. Otherwise, we would just say, oh, I'm procrastinating again. It would just be a regular, lighthearted thing that we do. But no, people get really ashamed of themselves and really down and really stuck. And so if that is you, I'm here to let you know that this is now time to say, I'm stuck. What got me here? What can I do to tease that apart so that I have some room to make some different movements? How can I make myself a little less afraid of moving forward? And of course, fear is the core reason why people start slowing down to the point where they go to a full stop. It's a fear of exposure. It's a fear of making mistakes. It's a fear of getting caught up in something and not having a choice to leave. It's a fear of being known to your audience. It's a fear of saying the wrong thing and offending people. It's a fear of trolls. It's a fear of having your time sucked away, writing an email to your audience that comes around every week or every other week, that comes around so quickly. And our fears are as unique as we are too. So I can casually list a list of 10, but there are millions of fears out there just waiting to pop up and waiting to take our precious time away from us. So if you feel like you're in the vicinity of being stuck, today's the day you're going to start acting differently around that experience.
I think some insight and awareness can go a long way, Christine. And what you kindly shared with us there is very insightful in terms of actually what I heard there is that we can become more stuck over time. These things sort of compound and build to the point where we slow down to a stop. I really like the way you described that because I can actually relate with that. And actually, I also heard not just, it sounds like sometimes it's not just one fear, but again, it's the fear compounding as well. And that's what's contributing to it. So given that, and given the work that you do, awareness is the first step. What's the second step? What can you then do with that awareness? When kids try stuff, they just try stuff. And I'm sure probably I could safely say this, everyone listening to this has tried some aspect of marketing. If we're now stuck with that, then we went down a path where we ground to a halt. So I'm curious, Christine, what generally works?
I love how you brought in the awareness as the first step. And I do think that in any treatment, the thing that happens naturally for clients is that they become aware of their own behavior at a different level because someone's helping to observe their behavior with them. So I tend to call it mindfulness, but it's the same, absolutely the same concept, that all of a sudden they can see themselves from a different angle or from a safer angle, I would say, or safer vantage point, that, oh, it's an observation. It's not something to be embarrassed about or to hide anymore or to be unaware of anymore. It's going to be something that I now am more purposeful about. And then the next step for me is forgiveness. And that is something that's really this energetic thing, really, because it's not a practical thing and it's not something we can take a picture of. It's really something that we do for ourselves. And I've had the question, how do you forgive yourself? And I think in some ways that's an interesting question because I think I've learned how to forgive myself very quickly. I found that's a great time saver. If I make a mistake, I go, oops, there we go. It happened again. I did something incorrectly. I did it too slowly or I did it too quickly, whatever it is. But my point for myself these days is to say, oops, that was it. That was another mistake. And to move right on by, almost to the point as if it never happened. And I think that is really a time saver. Instead of hemming and hawing, instead of crying about it, instead of wondering if I'm going to be okay the second time I try, I just go straight through to the next thing that I feel has to happen. So forgiveness is a very, very powerful tool. We all know this in relationships, but do we know this when it comes to ourselves and our procrastination? Procrastination continues when we don't forgive ourselves because we're constantly dragging the stuff we haven't done yet. And there will be a constant pile. I'm very good at productivity these days, but there's still stuff that I could be dragging around. There's still a lot of undone stuff because we do things and because stuff keeps coming at us if we have an abundant, happy life. So I'm not going to waste my precious time that's here today and ahead of me by dragging everything and making a big emotional mess out of the stuff I haven't yet completed. And when I complete things these days, I celebrate because I know each thing that's done is another win for me. It's another win for Christine Lee.
I really love what you just said there about celebration and also forgiveness and what an important step. And I'd like to acknowledge what you said there too about the fact that it's a less tangible thing. So it's not necessarily a strategic or a tactical thing, which is what we often talk about when it comes to marketing particularly. But I love the fact that you're talking about actually this is about forgiveness and self-forgiveness. And I can see how that lines up in terms of our energy, because if we're not doing that, then we're carrying around all of this stuck energy. And we're not then able to celebrate that because we're not in a place of celebration. And I know only too well how important it is just to celebrate the small wins and the small successes, or even just getting some things done, no matter how small or large those tasks or opportunities might be.
Yes.
That's great. So we start with awareness that we're stuck. We then forgive ourselves for the things that we haven't yet got round to doing, and also reminding ourselves that we won't get round to doing everything because there's a tremendous amount that's going to be left undone. And the world is ever changing, and so is our path, and the things that we need to focus on will need reevaluating on an ongoing basis. So it's almost, there's an element of letting go, I guess, in there as well as celebration.
Absolutely. I think I heard a podcast today, and I'm trying to recall which one. I apologize. I've listened to so many kind of simultaneously. The person was saying that there are glass balls and there are rubber balls. And this originally was from Mr. Dyson, who gave us the vacuum cleaner. This is his framework of seeing his responsibilities and priorities. Some things in life are precious, and if we mishandle them, they will break and cause us damage. So that is like disregarding your health. That would be disregarding one of the glass balls. And social media is a rubber ball that you can pay attention to it and enjoy it and all of that, but it's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never, but it's rarely going to be your glass ball, the one that you make sure you never drop. So I think there is this constant daily practice of reconnecting and making sure you don't lose your set of important balls that you want to keep in play. And you're right that we don't have to keep all of them in play every single day, that it is our judgment and it is time limited in a single day, what we can do. But we have a lot of choice and we have a lot of freedom. So use your mindfulness, use your free open-heartedness because you've forgiven yourself, and then make good choices about what you want to focus on. So for me, it goes forgiveness. And then in my model, fear is the next step, where when you have an open heart, your fear in some ways yells more loudly because you're open to what you're facing. And so then you want to deal with, okay, how rational is this fear? If it is really rational, what do we need to take care of? So really addressing your fears head on also, and really getting the coaching, getting the work group, getting the accountability partner, getting the extra notebook that you might need, doing a few experimental rounds of a podcast if you're thinking of launching one, really facing that, but with a attitude of I got this. I can do this rather than stuck energy me. So you're really moving forward saying I can face these fears. And then the next thing that comes is your focus. That's the glass balls and the rubber balls. What today do I need to handle? What activities can I focus on today that will help me to have an easier or better tomorrow? And that could be a wide range of things too, but you get to choose. But notice that I already feel better describing this stage as opposed to describing the person on the couch who's stuck. It's just easier to describe. The energy is lighter. And I think you'll feel that too in your body and in your mind and in your creative mind when you're starting to say, okay, what do I really want to invest in? What do I really want to see grow? Because I've been sitting here waiting for it to grow and it hasn't. But that's because I haven't fully invested my energy, thought, community, and hopes into this piece. Then the next part, if I may, is flow, that you develop higher level productivity where the stuff is flowing out of you. There's no fear anymore. You're just saying, what's next? What's the next interview that I can get myself booked on? Who's the next client? How can I make these thoughts of mine that I keep saying to different clients into a little cheat sheet to market really freely, just spontaneously? And I think that's the trajectory that everyone can take advantage of. It's just step by step, and we fall backwards and forwards inside that path. Certainly, it's not necessarily a linear progression, but it is available to you. And stuck is the worst part of the trajectory because you're not moving. There's no air. You're suffocating your own creativity and opportunity. So get out of the stuck feeling and move towards the flow.
That's fascinating, Christine. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Just coming back to a couple of the points that you made there, I'd love to get stuck into the focus element of all of this. But for me, the precursor to focus is coming back to what we touched upon a moment ago, is this letting go and being able to sort of let go of the things that perhaps we think we need to do, but maybe with some further analysis, we might not need to do. So I'm thinking of those balls you were describing a minute ago there. And there may be some that we're dealing with there, which perhaps aren't quite as important as we think that they are. So with focus in mind, and let's go there next, but with that in mind, before we get focused on an area, how do we just begin to learn to let go of some of the things that, or how do we even make decisions around perhaps some of the things that we think are important that aren't so important?
I'm going to use the example that just happened a couple minutes ago when I couldn't recall the podcast that the Dyson example was on. Back in the day, that would have been a humongous deal in my mind. And maybe it is. Maybe to someone listening, it's a humongous deal that I didn't attribute the right podcaster. But now it's not. And now I can just say, I can gauge things as I wish, that there isn't some sort of universally held standard for how perfect things need to be. And the more we see that, the more stuff will come and the more stuff will be available to us to process in our own brains, that we can really become idea generating machines. And that is not my original concept, but really, we are all born idea generating machines. We're just afraid of turning that to full speed sometimes. And even when we are connected with that, it can be daunting to know how to translate that for other people. So getting that to make sense to other people, trusting that what we think is important is going to be interesting to other people is a whole other piece of work. But when you get to the point where it's all play, that's another concept, that energy and play and having fun is really what makes the world spin. Then you realize, oh, marketing is kind of based on those principles too. You need some input for the marketing to run. And the marketing that's fun or changes your energy somehow, or captures your attention, or changes your thinking, is the content that makes an impact. It's not the stuff that you're repeating somebody else's stuff that's been done 100 times and you're just doing the template. That's kind of fun, but it may not be the material that really gets the person to say, okay, let me get onto her bandwagon. So it's really the stuff that only you can do. So that's definitely a point I wanted to make in this interview, that there is something inside of each of you that no one else can even come close to communicating and being. And we want to do everything we can to have that be full and vibrant and loud and known as best as we can.
That's lovely to hear. And you remind me there actually that a lot of this stuff, and marketing for me, whenever I think of marketing, I always think of it as a creative endeavor. And what you're describing there very much fits that picture for me in terms of play, having fun. So this is a reminder for our listener here to play with this, have some fun. And to an earlier point that you made, Christine, actually to experiment. And I imagine in most cases, any aspect of marketing or most aspects of marketing and social media and all that good stuff, that they probably are rubber balls that, you know, we are going to make mistakes, but they're going to bounce up again. And we'll learn from that. And then we can have some more fun and then come back to it again further down the line. So is that something that you see, Christine, once you start to get into that kind of that place, that zone of having fun and creativity, that you start to see the results coming back?
I would say so. The one product that I made fully because I was just experimenting with a new tech platform. It is the ability to be able to text your customers. I didn't know anybody who had used it before me, so I had the benefit of total ignorance, and I had a fun idea to attach to that platform, and I just kind of did a few Instagram stories, maybe one post, and I got 20 people to sign up. And I didn't even have the number of people I was expecting because it was so spur of the moment. And 20 people was a lovely number of people to try this out for the first time. So they knew I wasn't an experienced texter or user of this platform, but it didn't matter because we were all kind of experimenting together because nobody else had been on that platform either. None of the clients had used it either. And that's an example of how when we're not weighing things down, things tend to float up. And we forget that too. We think that we have to kind of dig up everything. But I think actually the natural state for things is actually relatively high, and that our fears bring things down a bit and make things more complicated. I think recently I've been invited to different podcast shows, and there's always a form to get through to the interview. And I used to get weighed down by those, but now I feel like I could just blow through those because the experience is there. I know what I'm saying these days, and let's go. So everything can turn into its own cycle of flow. And just marvel at how you are the manager of that flow, that you can shift the feeling of things, that you can say no to things, that you could fully do a deep dive in something brand new and bring 20 strangers along with you. It's okay. There are no judges here. There's no circus competition even, right? Even a circus is more complicated than what we're doing, right? So allow yourself also to see like this is really the epitome of fun because there are no consequences. Well, there's nobody's going to get kicked off of Instagram. Well, you might, but don't do that stuff. Do the stuff that, is the regular stuff that you have to sell. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really inspiring to hear, Christine. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask a question that's coming up for me because I think I do see this, and I'd love to know if it's true for you too, which is I do, and I'd say this is actually true for me in some circumstances as well. So it definitely is a real thing. I think there are times where we prevent ourselves from having fun because of what we, quotes, should be doing. I'm pretty confident that there's going to be a number of folks listening to our conversation today going, yep, that's true for me. And that's definitely true for me in the context of marketing. So tell me about your experience with that, working with other people, how and when that shows up, and then what you do about it.
Okay. Fantastic questions. You're such a fantastic interviewer. So thank you. It's such a pleasure to think through these wonderful questions. I would say that something that I do with most every client is that I have them look at the language that they're using. So you use beautiful language when you say we actually prevent ourselves. That's such powerful, that almost drums up a visual image of us just blocking ourselves from living. And I point out to customers and clients that the language we use to talk about ourselves and our work is filled typically with language of blocking. So that is, I should, that is, I can't, that is, I won't, that is, it's hard, that is, it's difficult, that is, it's never or always. These are words that tend to put us into a creative box where we're not being creative. We're feeling strapped or constrained, or there's some standard that we need to work towards before anything is released. So yes, many of us have a long history of being the self-blocker and preventing ourselves from having any sort of creative flow. But the wonderful news is all you need to do is watch your language and start speaking to yourself in a way that encourages and supports your flow. So that would be like, I will try an Instagram reel. I am going to let this email go out to my customers and see what the response rate is. See if I get any replies. See if I get a conversion. So it's, again, back to that experimentation rather than the negative predictions from the beginning, where of course we would prevent ourselves from going forward if we had only negative predictions. So you want to make absolutely sure that you're thinking about having fun. You're thinking about helping people instead of hurting yourself. And you're thinking about the fact that this is all just a funny circus, that this is, you're welcome in the circus and people are waiting for you to invite them in too. This is really, really fun when you let it be. When your self-worth is on the line, that's when nothing is fun. That's when everything feels risky. That's when everything feels too hard. That's when everything feels like you can't start it. And I've seen this for 20 plus years with my clinical patients because this is what people do. And this is the benefit of being a therapist. You realize how little we should be paying attention to our internal voice of worry, because it's a churn of work that we do to presumably protect ourselves. But when you realize that you need no protection in this way, you can just bypass that. You can sidestep it. You can give gratitude to your internal machine for working beautifully. And then you say to yourself, I have beautiful work to do. Everybody has fear inside. Let's just be real. Let's be real and show everybody else who we really are.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. This is great. So I appreciate there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that are new to coaching, but many experienced coaches too that can relate to what you're describing there, particularly those that are experienced in other disciplines. So this is a lovely reminder in many ways of actually the importance of what you were talking about there, about self-worth and that being part of the equation and that being part of something that gets in the way there. Remembering that that's sometimes what could be going on for us when we're particularly stuck.
Yes. I said to someone earlier today that when you're stuck or when you sense a roadblock, that's where to begin. That's not where to end. Sometimes we feel the block and then we say, okay, I quit for today. Let's sleep on it. Yeah. But you can use that as an entry point into a better way of working where you're just a lot clearer because you're not working from self-worth. You're working from what does the work need me to be? What do I need to add to the work? What does the work need from me? And that's how I tend to think about work, that it's not personal. This is not the work trying to rob sleep from me. It's the work just needing to get done. So I see it as an non-personal interaction.
That's a lovely image that's coming up in my mind there, is when we hit a block, like almost like a roadblock, what we've actually come up against is ourselves, and we need to just hop over to the other side and then remind ourselves that the focus of everything we're doing out here is, we're serving other people, we're supporting other people, particularly in the profession of coaching. And actually, by not doing that, we're doing a disservice to those that could greatly benefit from our help. So I love that shift that you're describing there, Christine, of almost seeing the block as the starting point rather than the point where we're ended. Now we can kind of throw in the towel.
You just made me think that I always say the clients that we're serving, like always remember the people we're serving. But when we do well, we're also serving ourselves, right? This whole series is about making time for marketing and helping the coach. Everything that we do that is pro flow, pro health, pro wellness, pro creativity is also feeding us in return. So sometimes we think of creativity as almost like a drain on our energy. I see it as a replenishment of our energy, that we get to expend energy and then go to sleep feeling like we're full of energy still, that we're not draining our willpower until we have nothing across the day, that we're actually even improving our state of well-being throughout the day. So I just wanted to add that in.
I love that. And that's a really, again, another nice new perspective that we can think about these things, because we can sometimes think, right, okay, I've got a creative task to do now. Actually, that being our expending of energy versus actually this could be something that's actually filling our well and bringing energy into our situation. So I love, again, that subtle little kind of flip of the coin there, and just thinking about this from another perspective, the reverse perspective there. With all of that in mind, there was something you said earlier about language, which really sort of caught my attention in terms of how we're describing what's going on for us. And I wanted to tie that in with something we touched upon earlier, which is having focus. And whenever I think about focus, I can't help but think about vision as well. And I always find that if I'm trying to focus, I have to pause for a moment and think about what I'm working towards here and what's the vision of that. So I'm curious to learn from you, how do you manage distraction and how do you get focused? And because I realize that when I'm unfocused and maybe lacking that vision, it's because the vision's either become clouded because there's a lot going on in my world, and or there's so much distraction around me at the moment that I can't focus on that next step towards that vision, even if that vision is clear. So few things going on there, which I recognize show up in lots of different ways for different people in different situations. But I'm sure there are some sort of truths that you've been able to reveal through your work in terms of keeping on that line.
It's a complicated question, I would say. And I think everybody, of course, is working on that, right? We all want to be available to the occasional distraction, I think, because we need the occasional distraction. I think having a break from work is a good thing. And sometimes we lose sight of that, and then we get ourselves into real trouble with burnout and exhaustion and really like the end of creativity when you just have no brain cells left. That's that feeling. And I think the fact that we have constant sources of distraction is just an interesting facet of our daily lives now. I think it's almost, for me, that you want to make sure that even your distraction is feeding you somehow. And if it doesn't feel like it is, like it's taking something away from you, that you just understand that you can opt out, that you can turn off the screen, that you can say goodbye, that you could say, I'll come back soon, with a friend even. It's not just social media or your phones that are distractions. It can be that you decide, this project of mine, even though it makes me afraid to my core, I've decided that I'm going to go take a digital sabbatical for a full day and see what I can do with this. And to really give yourself a fighting chance to concentrate. And I don't want you to beat yourself up if you end up just being out of practice and you've come up with nothing. It's just getting more comfortable with saying, I do need to set some purposeful time aside, and I do not have to feel guilty about saying goodbye to my children or my spouse or my partner or my friends for a little bit to see what I've got inside of me, because this is taking my time sitting on all of this creative material. Things need to get tended to, and we don't have to feel ashamed about it. It's the feeling ashamed about everything that takes up all that time. In reality, we do have time to focus on all of the things, but it's the shame that takes up all the good juju and the mojo and all the other short terms about our energy. We don't realize that, except when we're psychologists or we're in treatment or we've been working on this stuff carefully, that we've been looking at how our time flows across the day.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And it's a really important and useful insight to hear there, Christine. It's actually how we feel about these things and the shame and the guilt that's actually really taking up the time that we can't find to do our marketing, if it is. That's what we're talking about in this series. So I'm sort of almost tying 2 points of yours together here, which is the shame or the guilt that we might feel that even if we put that time aside to do something creative, we may not, and we're probably quite good at expecting certain outcomes from that. And we may not reach the outcome that we were hoping for, but then being able to actually let go of that, whatever that expectation is, and still feel okay with that, because there is a lot at stake. Particularly, we've all got busy lives and responsibilities and families and that sort of thing. So I think that there is a danger that we can end up in that cycle of being hard on ourselves when, if we've put away that side to do something creative or to do some marketing, if that's what we're doing, to then find ourselves at a place where we don't feel like we've really progressed or we didn't get the outcome that we were looking for. But what I was hearing there, Christine, and I'd love to hear your further thoughts on this, it's about being okay with that and then just moving on to the next thing and then coming back to it. I think that's the thing that I've certainly experienced, is sometimes if we don't get those outcomes, we don't come back to it.
Excellent points. And I just want to remind everybody where maybe 20 minutes ago I said, I forgive myself so quickly, it's almost as if the thing never happened. That statement is relevant here, right? That when you take an effort and it doesn't really fly, or it doesn't give you the results that you were hoping for or expecting, that's an event, right? When a car crosses by your vision, you don't spend time thinking about it. It's just another car that goes by. So that's the not so great image I'm coming up with, but it's a daily event. It's an event of your life. It just didn't happen to click, but that doesn't mean you stop looking for the next car, or that another car won't come, or that you won't have another opportunity. It's when we hang everything on a single event that we get frustrated and we make ourselves bananas and we think we're no good and that we think we should leave marketing altogether. It's just always going to be a pool that we can jump into again. And then another thought I had is that this is where TikTok comes in. Before Rob and I pressed record on this interview, I said, could I mention TikTok? And he said, of course. And I mentioned TikTok because it's such an interesting platform where if you have 30 seconds a day, you could be an influencer, because on TikTok, it's your real personality that is the connector. And you can, of course, take a picture of your dog or take a picture of you doing your makeup and have it just be a still shot and then put a couple words on it. And that is your input for the day, that it doesn't have to be polished or even so organized. It just needs to be out there. So I would say if you're having zero output for marketing, TikTok might be a very reasonable place for you to start, because everybody and their sister is on there. And if it's not great content, or you don't think it's great content, it's just going to be in the river of content that is on that platform. You get to do another try again. And on that platform, they even encourage posting multiple times a day. And you never know what's actually going to hit with your audience. But there are certain ways of hashtagging, of course, and messaging that you can try to hit your audience. But there is just a natural audience on TikTok waiting for you to show up.
That's amazing. We haven't mentioned TikTok in this series yet, so I'm really glad that you've brought that into the conversation as well, Christine. But I think there were a couple of other things that stood out for me there, and just you mentioning that platform, which is about just doing something and just having a go and making stuff up and putting it out there. And I feel for many people, sometimes that's, and again, this may lean back to what you were saying earlier, for many people, that feels like too much of a risk, or there's too much at stake to be able to do that. But a curious thing is that TikTok itself has actually come up in quite a number of high-level business conversations that I've had with people quite recently. They recognize that younger people that they know, maybe sort of nephews, nieces, or their own children, are using it and the popularity of it. And so they've gotten there themselves, and they've been surprised at what they found from a business point of view already on that platform. So I think what I'm learning there is sometimes it's about opening our mind up and not just dismissing something away because it's what we think it might be rather than what it could be. So there's something there. But then from you, Christine, I'm also learning that actually, I loved the analogy there about the rubber balls earlier, where this is about just putting something out there, having a try, having some fun with this, and then just seeing what happens, almost being very experimental about this, being creative and having some fun, which I love. I think that's such a great way to think of it.
Yeah. A thought came to mind that the reason why we might not have fun with social media creation is that we feel it's a reflection on our ability. And there's that self-worth piece again. And if you get to a point where it's just another piece of me connecting with people, it's another piece of me showing other people who I am, even if it doesn't connect. And it's me being safe because social media has not a chance in jeopardizing my relationship with myself. And when you get to that point, it should feel more fun.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you, and I was wondering whether with perhaps some of the more executive clientele that you have, that vulnerability piece, I know this comes up a lot in conversations in coaching, particularly around the subject of leadership. But I'm just wondering, does that come up a lot for you with the folks that you work with in terms of tackling that vulnerability piece? And if people are presenting themselves as feeling vulnerable, trying something out like that, how do you manage that with them?
I think for me, that's not my particular clientele. I would say this makes me think about the colleagues I'm in Facebook groups with. So other entrepreneurs who are trying different things like TikTok or really wary of TikTok or just being open. So being open is really equated these days with being vulnerable with what they're trying and what did not work to their expectations and what they're doing for the next time. And I think the healthy, supportive Facebook groups that are out there do nurture this attitude of openness and sharing and experimentation and the occasional celebration, and that there's real variability of what you can step into the pool with, that you can post with a supportive comment for someone or an idea for your next launch. That, again, it's not showing who's the best or who's the most perfect or who's the most liked person on TikTok. It's not about that. And those are the groups that I certainly gravitate towards. I would feel very unsafe if it were the other kind, where it was about rankings and quality of your picture or anything like that. So I would say vulnerability, we're all vulnerable, whether we say it or not, because we all have feelings and we all have that worthiness that we're working on, even if we're protecting it in a good way, that we know it's not out there for everybody, but it's still a work in progress. Hopefully we're trying to build our worthiness and solidify that so that we can share it with others and help them with theirs. So this is all work in progress, people. This is nothing concrete or book format or judgeable. This is just open season, open play. And even the vulnerable get to play on the soccer field, I'm thinking, right? No, we don't know which soccer player is feeling the most vulnerable oftentimes. We just see how they play. So play, show your play more. Let the other stuff be in therapy. Go to your therapist and talk about the other stuff, about how it makes you feel. But please do show up if you intend to, if that's a priority for you, if that's something that you think is going to help your business, do that. Do you have to show up on social media? Absolutely not. I do not think so. I think there are other ways that you can get great clients for yourself. But social media is a free, available, mass marketing platform for you. That's how I see TikTok. And this is like, I don't even have to run ads anymore. I can just go on TikTok and get 50 other people. So why wouldn't I? Okay. So see what avenues are available to you and go travel them.
Yeah, that's great to hear. In many respects, you remind me there that we are all vulnerable. And we're in this together in that sense. And our vulnerabilities may be different. Indeed, our own vulnerability will vary depending on what we're exposed to and what our situation is.
Yes.
But I think recognizing that what you just shared with us there is, again, coming back to the awareness piece that we were talking about earlier and just going, okay, I feel vulnerable here. But then we can make a kind of an adult assessment of what I'm about to do, a safe thing to be doing. What are the real consequences of what I'm about to do now? And then actually just having a try, having some fun with it, and then sort of seeing where it goes.
And remembering what are the risks of not taking action.
Right. Yeah.
Which we always forget.
Yeah, exactly. And that does tie back in with this concept of actually being of disservice to people, which is actually by not being out there, there might be people that are struggling that would benefit from the support that you can offer. And then it's only down to us to show up. No one's going to really do that for us. So it's, again, getting across that roadblock and getting onto the other side. Conscious of your time, Christine, I'm curious to just sort of look at the other side of this. And I imagine through your work, you've seen quite a number of success stories and people who have broken through procrastination. So I'd love to share with our listener maybe some of the specific stories if you have any, but I'm thinking more of what is it like on the other side? So when you do break through and have some success, maybe with your marketing or overcoming procrastination, what are the benefits of getting through that? And you've mentioned creativity and fun, so I imagine that's in the mix somewhere. But what else?
Absolutely. I would say opportunities coming your way instead of you having to look for them. That is a great outcome of opening your heart up and putting your message out there, is that people are going to find you, especially in this day and age. It's so easy just to connect with the people that you're curious about or fascinated by. I love personally connecting with people who've just put up the really funny or heartwarming video, not for professional reasons, but because I just want to support them or just note that they've touched me across the universe. It's just so much fun. So, but it's not just the small things that happen. Big opportunities can now come your way when you've made the room to accept them. So it's really saying to the universe, I'm ready. And that will move other people's energy as well. So it's not just your clients that are going to be listening. It's other colleagues. It's going to be podcast hosts. It's going to be bloggers. They're people who are looking for magazine commentary. You're reminding me of someone I have to get back to. And this really does happen. When you think about it, when energy moves, it moves other things. And again, stuck energy moves nothing.
Yeah.
So we're always going to come back in this episode to that law that an object in place stays in place. If you want opportunities, if you want your business to be more fun, move something.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate we've only touched upon it today, that aspect of actually moving your energy, but I love the idea of, having fun and playing and creativity. I think that's a lovely place to sort of bring our conversation full circle. Before we wrap up, Christine, I know you've got a podcast. You've also got your own blog where you go much deeper into some of the stuff that we've covered today. Where can people find out more about you and also connect with those aspects of what you do, your creative output?
Thank you so much. I've recently told Rob I love hosting my relatively new podcast. It's called Make Time for Success. And Rob was a big supporter of the idea of me becoming a podcaster long ago. Please listen into the Make Time for Success podcast. I look forward to having Rob on the show soon. And my website is Procrastination Coach. I'm also Procrastination Coach all over social media, as I've mentioned. I would welcome our listeners, if it's okay, to download a freebie that I have. It's called the Free Resource Library, and it's just a set of 12 downloadable planners and tools that will help you get out of your own way in a planning mode. And you can get that at procrastinationcoach.com/library. Again, it's procrastinationcoach.com/library. And I think I've just modeled how to market yourself.
There you go. Well, that's perfect, Christine. Thank you. And to go further, those links will be in the episode show notes, which you can find on the Association for Coaching's website at associationforcoaching.com, and have a look for the podcast there. And you will find those links that Christine mentioned just now on there if you want to click through. So, final question then, Christine. Is there anything you'd add to our conversation today for our listener that I'm hoping is feeling a little bit more relieved and perhaps a little bit less stuck than they were at the beginning of our conversation today?
I would just say gratitude, because I'm feeling grateful for this opportunity to reconnect with Rob and to introduce myself to the audience here, the very broad and beautiful audience here. So make gratitude part of your work process. That celebration piece. Don't forget to celebrate those wins, big and small. Celebrate other people's successes too. So have gratitude for the entire big picture, that you get to do this work, that you get to stand out, that you get to be a part of a huge mass of people where you don't stand out. Be grateful for it all. Be grateful that your pets can come with you to work these days. All sorts of things like that. And have fun, have fun, have fun.
That's great. Well, Christine, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. I'm Rob Lawrence. For 20 years, the AC's purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and societies worldwide. To find out more about the Association for Coaching and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our website at associationforcoaching.com. You can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.